Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for coming to the advisory council meeting for April. We're gonna run through a few kind of updates and one kind of administrative task, and then we will cede the floor, as it were, to a special guest that had just joined us, Mr. Joshua Monaco from the Federal Geographic Data Committee. Thank you for Josh for joining us today. We're going to go through the agenda here in just a second, and we'll get started. So, just to kind of give a quick overview of what we're going to go over today, we're go through our usual kind of flow: introductory remarks, public comment, some meeting administration, mostly just to kind of call out some changes to the membership. And then we'll discuss and potentially accept the strategic plan that was completed by the GIS office. We'll go through some updates, and then we will have our special guest do his presentation. So with that, we'll go on to introductions as a means of taking attendance for the council. So we'll just go down in order as we see it on the screen. So I am Alfredo Herrera. I'm the Chief Geographic Information Officer. I forgot my own title. And I am here. So if Scott, go ahead.
Scott Ball, I'm Chief Data Officer, and I'm also here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stuart Delan. I'm an environmental analyst for CTD.
Hi, I'm Liz Congo. I'm the Transportation Supervising Planner for the Enterprise GIS team at DOT.
I am Dan Chaya. I'm the I represent DESPI for the state, and I'm here.
Hi, Gary Archambault, Chief Data Officer for the Connecticut Department of Public Health.
Hi, I'm Eric Snowden. I'm the GIS and IT Manager for the Capital Region Council of Governments. My attendance is obvious.
I'm Mark Hoover. I'm the GIS Director at MetroCog.
Hi, John Guskowski. I'm a planner with Tyche Planning and Policy Group, representing the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities.
Emily Wilson, University of Connecticut.
Pete's not here. Megan McGaffin. I work for SLR Consulting, here for General. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. So we'll kind of go into the introductory remarks. Just a couple of quick updates. We did have a little bit of staffing changes with the GIS office, which I did talk about the last meeting. We had David Lukens departing back in November. And we have now selected a replacement to be the new GIS coordinator, and that will be Ashley Benitez, and she will be starting on May 17th. She comes to us from CT Deep, and we are very much looking forward to her joining our team and doing great stuff with us. With that being said, I'm going to move on to any public comments. So if anybody from out there would like to say something or have any questions or comments, now is a good time to voice those. We will be opening up the floor for questions of Josh for everyone later, but now is a good time to kind of ask any kind of other questions from anybody else in the audience. All right. Moving right along then. So meeting administration, this is fairly quick. As you may have noticed, we have had some changes in the membership of the council. Thank you to Liz Congo for being the newly appointed DOT representative. And then quite conspicuously, we have lost the services of Thad Dimkowski as a CCM representative because he now works for DOT. So we are in the process of communicating with CCM to get them to appoint a second person, so John doesn't have to carry all that weight himself. And as soon as we get the reappointment, probably at the next meeting, we will have a second, the two from the CCM and just kind of reiterate so that everyone's also aware, we still have the second outstanding General Assembly appointment still vacant, as we have since inception. We are still trying to communicate with the legislature to see if they have any candidates. Please reach out to Representative Zullo, I believe is the appointing person there, to see about getting that one filled if you're interested and not already a member and otherwise qualified. All right. So with that, all that kind of out of the way, I would like to move on to talk about the strategic plan. So Carl and I have been talking about the strategic plan for quite a while now. This is something that has taken quite a bit of work, and in no small part by Carl. He has done a tremendous job for us. I feel like this is a really solid first draft of the plan, or first edition of the plan, I should say. Um, uh, uh, Before I say anything further, I just want to thank Carl so much for getting this done and completing it and making such an excellent plan for all of us. And yeah, so quick update about the plan. So plan is fully written. It's been edited and checked. As soon as this council approves this plan, we will get it published on their website, so it'll be a public document and available to view by all. We have had it reviewed by external Connecticut stakeholders and internal review, so we've had lots of opinions on what people think. And most of it is probably very, very positive. We haven't really had any glaring issues with the plan as written, or at least that no one has indicated to us thus far. Yeah, and with that, does anyone on the council have any questions or comments or concerns about the plan? All right. So I guess we can have a vote. If you could we'll loop back here for a second, a couple of slides to the roll call, and we'll just go through everybody's name one by one and just say yay or nay if you approve the plan. So bear with me while I get back there. And so I don't know if I get a vote, but I say yay.
So Alfredo, unless you were making the motion, I would like to just formally make the motion that the advisory board approve and adopt the strategic plan.
Okay. Anybody second?
I'll second that. Megan McGaffin.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll just vote in order as you see it on screen. I say yay.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up whether we're voting or non-voting members while we're talking. Sorry.
I say yay as well.
Yay as well.
Yay as well.
Yay as well.
Yay.
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 All right. Is that all of the council members that are here?
Now all together.
No, all right. Well, thank you. The motion carries. It has been adopted unanimously by the council. Thank you for all of that. And I appreciate any input that you may have in future. And as required by the statute, we will be doing annual updates to the plan. We hope that those will be much less arduous processes. And then at the 5-year increments, when we go, we will do a much bigger lift, very similar to the one that we did this year, to do a full revision of the plan. So that is the kind of the plan, so to speak, no pun intended, going forward, to proceed with the strategic plan. Some of the things that we hope to address is the implementation of some of the ideals and goals on the plan going forward. And with that, we will move on to some of the priority topics and updates, mostly from the GIS office. So with that, we'll start with the broadband activities, and I will pass it off to Sarah Hurley for that update.
Hi, everyone. So we've been working with the BTP to aggregate and evaluate data on Connecticut community anchor institutions, which are used in part of the BEAD program. The BEAD program offers opportunities to support deployment of gigabyte connections for CIA locations. In March, the CIA list was published, and there's currently an opportunity to challenge the locations for different reasons, like if there's the service availability reported is wrong, or if CIA locations are missing from the published list, those can be challenged. So questions came up about how the published broadband data availability speeds, which were sourced from the FCC broadband data collection, compared to the actual speeds that are offered by the local service providers. So we were able to look through the BDC data and evaluate the availability speeds from FCC that are in the CIA list and compare it to the speeds offered by CEN at the same locations, so that we were we were able to better understand the magnitude of what the challenge process was going to look like for them. And this is important to see what the discrepancies are like for the served and unserved locations, to better understand how the whole landscape of the CAIs are served. So yeah, that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Sarah on the CAI community anchor institutions and the broadband stuff? As stated before, we will have Ashley Benitez starting to soon on May 17th to kind of help and take charge of this once again. And we will likely have more updates going forward on this topic as we proceed throughout the year. So any other questions on broadband? All right, moving on to aerial imagery with Carl.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alfredo, you're going to flip the slides?
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the imagery delivery is progressing. We are up to about 60% of the state having been delivered on the initial delivery. That it includes in this block format, block 1 in the northwest, block 2 in the southeast, and most of block 4 in the far east. 3 is coming in probably mid to late May. Next slide, please. On our side, we've been undergone an effort to do a QA/QC, and as I mentioned in the previous iterations of this talk, there are multiple QA processes for this delivery. The first one is the internal review at Dewberry, which is the vendor. They have a wide variety of internal QA processes. They have a subcontractor that does another level of QA. And so our work then is to validate and find systemic errors. And before I left on my leave, several, in fact, many of the stakeholders, some of which are on this call, agreed to help with reviewing GIS data, orthoimagery, and some other derivative products. And that's been progressing. Most of the work so far I review has been the block 1 and block 2, but also block 4. And so we're starting to get that information back and use that to respond to the vendor. So block 1 is essentially done with QA for imagery, and we sent our responses in. And as we speak, the final delivery of the first the primary core data set will be coming in the next few days. Block 2 is mostly done for ortho. I have to do one review of our stakeholder comments and compile them, and then that will go out to Dewberry. They should take them 2 or 3 weeks to respond, and then it'll come back to us. I should mention that a problem with the infrared imagery was identified where some of the red band was leaking into areas you don't normally see IR in. That won't affect the normal RGB type imagery, but that's something that we'll have to learn more about. Block 3 is on schedule, and Block 4, basically parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all more or less on time. And as soon as we get part 5, we will flip that out and get that to Dewberry for any edits. Next slide, please. This is an approximate imagery return schedule. So we have the delivery, we have the QA from us, we have the return, we have any questions that comes back to us, and then there is a process by which Emily Wilson on this call publishes the data. So again, approximate return is that may change as different things happen. We have a lot of wheels turning here. We have to get the data back. It has to be processed. It has to be uploaded, and then a service has to be created. But I wanted to give you at least a general approximate estimate about when the imagery for each of the blocks will come. Next slide, please. So we have the imagery and we have the LiDAR. The LiDAR is the source of all of the GIS data. And so we have a variety of derivative products. I wanted to mention the status of those. We've started taking serious looks at large areas of those. We have streams and lakes. Those are both very good. I should note that the stream product does not have like a center line, and rather it's more of a polygon product, and that has a minimum size width, minimum width. So in places it looks like it is separated. That's a function of the specification, not of the mistake by the vendor. Lakes we have, I believe, like a 2-acre minimum, and those have also been generally very accurate. There are 1.9 million building footprints in this data set, which is a very massive quantity, and 1% is still 19,000. So it's a lot of data. We had a few initial issues with different types of quality problems. We had a meeting with Dewberry. I introduced the concept of shape metrics to them, and that appears to have improved the level of delivery quality. We're still discussing what constitutes a final threshold, and I'll have a meeting with the imagery work group probably early next week to discuss where we'll go with that. But we're still in discussion with Dewberry about the final edits. The shoreline and low tide data appears to be logical and consistent so far. That's for Block 2. The DEM, by and large, is excellent. Found very few errors, which is a good sign for the quality of the LiDAR and the elevation control. We also have a surface data set, which is the maximum surface. That's kind of like the DSM that some of you are familiar with. That is also shows almost no errors. We did have one clarification with the vendor over how a saddle is defined. So one of the features of this DM is that we cut out a notch where we have bridges over surface waters. And if you think about it, if you have a bridge and you have that elevation, then an elevation bumps into that bridge, then there's no logical path, flow path. So that was an issue. But we have it. It's not a totally satisfying solution, but we have a logical solution that we can validate. So that's where we're on that. And then finally, as I said, we have about 25 different people participating currently. A few more will be coming on board as we go over to Block 3 and parts of Block 4. We have over 25 people participating in the editing and reviewing the data, and we've have about 24,000 calls that have been made so far. So yes, that's a lot, but if you have 1.9 million buildings and 30 terabytes of imagery and 30 terabytes of LiDAR, it's still pretty good. So overall, the quality is good. There are a few things that we are still quibbling about, but I think we're making good progress. Next slide, please. Through all this pain of the QA part, I just want to remind people why we care about this. We get really excellent imagery. Here you can see solar panels, individual culverts, crossing lines. This is why we're taking the time and the pain to QA this so that everyone gets something similar to this in their own communities. Next slide, please. And then finally, I worked at Coast Guard briefly as an instructor, and this is a nice shot of their marching grounds, stage grounds in the front of the building where they meet every morning. And I thought this is a good example of the kind of detail you get where you can actually see the stripes in the flag and individual steps and just a lot of other really impressive things. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll take those. Otherwise, I'll pass it over to Alfredo.
Any questions for Carl about the imagery?
I just have one. So so I understand that the imagery is going to take until, a little beyond the middle of summer. Are you going to, when about I don't know if I missed it, but about the data and any of the other derivative products, is it all going to be released at once, or are you going to be staging other releases?
The other data is going to come out at different times.
Okay.
The imagery is the first thing that's getting processed. We're basically done with the approval of Block 1. That also has to be returned, and then we'll have to bring it out, but we'll let people know when that's available. The buildings are going to be especially the 3D buildings are going to probably be the last thing to be produced along with the contours. Those will be mid to late summer. I have not really given kind of an official evaluation of that final date, but I'm going to write a blog up this coming week on the timing of the outputs, and I will write some detailed information about the derivative products so that people will have that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I do have
Laura?
another one. I'm sorry. I have one other question. I don't know if this is the right part of the discussion for it, but have you figured out a way to get funding to keep this going in perpetuity?
We are still exploring those options.
right.
We are trying to get through this delivery first,
Yeah.
primarily, but we are thinking about that in the long term. Yes.
Okay. Best of luck.
All right. Thank
And
you.
Meg, just to follow up on this, when you start getting data in your hand, if you find use cases that are saving you money or bring extra value, please report to us so that we can pass it on to the people who help fund these activities.
Absolutely. Will do.
Yep. Eric, go ahead.
I guess I'm just under the assumption that Dewberry is probably learning a lot from this first flight out of the two so that things get finished on time next time. I can see that that's going to be something that I mean, obviously they know that that's the requirement, so they're going to have to, I mean, I can see how long this is taking and how complex, and it's because of the complexity. It's not because it's, they're slow, but I mean, I mean, they're going to have to do it 8 months sooner, right? Next time. Somewhat. So
For sure, yes.
all right. Thanks.
We are aware, they are aware. We are talking about that. We're in discussions about, what contingency plans we kind of have for that sort of thing. But, the plan is still to do the second flight in 2026. But we are all very clear that, the funding expires in December 31st of 2026. So we got to get everything in by then. Stu, go ahead.
along the same lines regarding the 2026 flight, will the QAQC process be similar for those that are kind of contributing from the GIS Council and beyond in terms of review of the 26 imagery? Or is that kind of still being figured out?
That's a good question, Stu. I think it'd probably be a little more streamlined because a lot of the processes will hopefully have been refined, especially with the building footprints and some of the classification issues they had. So I'm hoping that it requires less work and less involvement. And I think also we have a better idea about what their internal capability and goals are, and I think we will provide some guidance for them to direct their their internal QA efforts, QA/QC efforts before we get to that point. So they have less. We see less errors when it gets to us.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? All right, so we will move on to the next topic, which is the parcel and CAMA data collection. And here I will pass it off to Leah to talk through the process that we've been going through this year on the parcels and CAMA.
You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So there's still a little time before the May 1st deadline for the towns to get the information to the COGS and the COGS send it to us. Just for a quick overview, the items that we're asking for are a CAMA CSV, a digital parcel file, and the metadata information for both. And right now we are currently wrapping up our outreach for this year's collection. We've already spoken with the CAMA vendors to explain the change that we are requesting to the CAMA schema for this collection or in overall. And we've also reached out to the parcel vendors to introduce the new parcel schema. And we've been coordinating with the COGS to make sure those changes are being adhered to for this collection. We'll go to the next slide. As for the changes, after reviewing the output from last year's collection, we made the decision that we needed a way to check for suppressed entries in the CAM report. So we added an additional field called suppression, which we'll use to double check if a flagged entry is being shown appropriately. This will include the owner's name being changed to current owner and the mailing address being changed to the property address. Go to the next slide. The biggest change for this year's collection is the introduction of parcel schema. This includes the object ID, shape, area, shape, length, which are default fields, and also including parcel ID, town name, editor, edit date, edit comment, location, parcel type, unit type, and a link that links back to the CAMA data. We found these fields to be integral in help analyzing and managing and to manage and to help ease this change into the process. We've provided an empty file geodatabase with all the fields already in place, and we've also provided a crosswalk to field map them if you can't append to the file database. Go to the next slide. These can all be found on the new CAMA and parcel page, which was moved from the IGPP page to the GIS office page. This website has the previously mentioned file database for the parcels and crosswalks and scheme descriptions for both the CAMA and the parcels. There's also additional information on the statutes, the metadata. You can have access to last year's data in Parcel Viewer, and there's also contact information for the COGS and vendor-specific instructions to help for this year's collection. That's my update.
All right, thank you for that. And then just kind of to reiterate, we are, this is a statutorily mandated thing that we are all doing. We're helping the COGS facilitate the COGS in this effort to get the data from the towns to them and then eventually back to us. And as you are, I'm sure all aware, we have been, taking that data and then creating the seamless statewide data set that we went through the trouble of making last year. We are hoping to go through that effort again, hopefully in a shorter amount of time for this year, and then going forward and continuing to find better and more efficient ways to do that process. But to say that last year's effort was successful is an understatement. At the last time I looked, we are averaging about 15,000 queries per day on that new data set. So it is very widely used. There are any number of different uses for it. Some of the ones that we've heard anecdotally are frankly mind-boggling. So if you have any interesting or unique uses of that data set that we are providing, please, once again, just like with the imagery stuff, let us know. We want to know these things because if we can make any changes to the way we collect the data or process it or republish it so that we can kind of accommodate these kinds of unique use cases, then that's all the better for us. And then, once again, and this kind of leads us into the next discussion, we want to make sure that this kind of then propagates on upward to the other levels of government as well. Yeah, that's kind of like, just want to reiterate and put a kind of like a little bit of an exclamation point as to like why this is super important. Meg, you had a question?
Yep, this is just more of a comment. I just wanted to say that the data collection and the results are vastly improved over previous years. And I just wanted to thank the council and Leah too, and just say there was really like so much better, really significant level of improvement. And I appreciate all the work that went into to updating it. It's really great. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one suggestion. I know you all send out the email to all the assessors, like requesting the data, and I think it would be helpful if you like copied the COG staff on that, just because we start getting, emails in early April with some of the reports, and it's a reminder that it's due, but still, it would be nice to see like exactly what they're seeing, because I know this year they were inputting some of the data and things like that. So it would be helpful if we were involved or just notified of those emails.
Understood. Yeah, that was something that we also noticed, and we are having discussions to make sure that doesn't happen again. So that we saw the same thing, and but we'll make that correction and make sure you guys are more part of the process.
All right, thanks.
Not that you're not already. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we had discussed this offline earlier, but I just, as far as the deadline of May 1st and the COGS reporting compliance or non-compliance, I think what we had discussed, and maybe it would be helpful for the other COG people to know that, I mean, because the suppression field being added to the reports, there was, delays on the part of the CAMA vendors getting those pushed out. I think we had agreed, earlier that, generally, if the town submitted something before the deadline, that's okay. And if they have to send it again with the updated report after the 1st, that's acceptable. I'm just wanted to make sure I was correct on that.
Yep, that is correct.
Is there a in years past there'd been a shared spreadsheet for kind of documenting the submittals? Is that something that's just being taken care of through the survey 123 or with that part? Okay.
Yeah, so Leah and I are working on an application that is a web application to kind of give you guys feedback as to who has submitted the metadata survey, so that you guys can kind of fill out that information. If you see or need any adjustments made to that so that we can kind of capture some information that we're not capturing already, please let us know. Like these things are always work in progress. I know it's kind of like we're very much, halfway down the path, but like it's never too late to pivot on certain things. And like, so if you need a field that says, did they submit to the COG, yes or no, like we could potentially add that field and things like that to kind of help give you the metrics that you need to help you guys be as successful as you can in this data collection.
Is there going to be like a formal template for, after it's all said and done as to the compliance and everything else, or is that all just going to be collected through your survey
the hope
app?
is, yeah, I believe so. The hope is that we collect it through the survey app and kind of parse the information that way. We would obviously work through any of the issues that we see collaboratively with all of the various COGs. We don't want to do it without you, because obviously you guys are the ones that have the hands-on with the individual towns. So really, we're just trying to come up with like what's the best way to kind of help you out here and kind of take some of the technical burden off so that we can just get the answers that we all need. Once again, we're happy to work together on this. We're developing the thing. We're hoping to have it out either tomorrow or early next week. At least a draft of kind of like a almost like a dashboard view of like who's responded and certain other key metrics. And then once again, these are all things that are like in flux in development. So like if we need to make changes and do things like whether it's to the survey or the display app, please just let us know and we'll work with you guys to make sure that you guys get what you need to make this work.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we are going to pass it off to our esteemed guest here. I will stop my share here momentarily. So I would like to introduce Mr. Josh Delmonico. He's the Executive Director of the Federal Geographic Data Committee. And I'll take it away from here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and talk with you. I have some slides I'm going to go through, but feel free to either stop or ask questions, or happy to take questions at the end. Also, you guys are all doing awesome work. It's neat to see. In this job, I spend a lot of time talking about people that do work, and so it's cool to get to see things that are really happening and making a difference in the world. So thanks for that opportunity. You wouldn't believe the number of times I say things like parcels or addresses in a day, but hold on. Sure. All right, let's see if this works. All right, can you see my slides?
Yep.
All right, great. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Federal Geographic Data Committee, in case you're not familiar with what FGDC does. I'll talk a little bit about the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. I'll talk from my perspective about both of their relationship to Connecticut and why they're important, and then I'll talk about the NSDI strategic plan effort that we're working on, and then end with how you can participate. We'll preface it by saying that all of these things are my thoughts. So if you have additional ideas or thoughts on how these things might be applicable to you or how you might participate, I would welcome them. So if you're not familiar with the Federal Geographic Data Committee, we've been around since the 90s, but in 2018, the Geospatial Data Act was passed, and that codified into law the Federal Geographic Data Committee. So we have a 32-member interagency committee consisting of federal agencies, and we are the lead entity in the executive branch for developing, implementing, and reviewing geospatial data policy and standards. We're chaired by the Secretary of Interior, and the Director of OMB is the Vice Chair. Both are delegated to offices in those organizations. Here's a quick breakdown. For the most part, if there's a federal agency you've heard likely on the FGDC, there might be a few exceptions there, but so some of the things FGDC is responsible for, I kind of broke this down into national and federal responsibilities. So on a national level, we lead the development and management of the National Spatial Data Infrastructure and the NSDI strategic plan, as well as geospatial policy. We're responsible for defining roles and responsibilities and coordinating among the federal entities, federal government and non-federal entities like states, tribes, local government, academia, and the private sector and nonprofits around the use, collection, and sharing of geospatial information, Oh, all right, let's see. Not seeing the slides change. Is anyone else seeing the slides change? Oh, cool. I got it. All right, we'll try this. Got it. Sorry. Now you can see all of the agencies that are participating. That's fascinating. Inside PowerPoint, it's moving, but I have to change the slides inside Teams. Probably you guys are all like, we knew that already, but I did not know that. All right, back on track here. On the national side too, we advise federal and non-federal users on their NSDI responsibilities. And federally, we really oversee and coordinate the federal geospatial portfolio. So we work across agencies. You guys are probably familiar with the data themes and the national geospatial data assets. So we work across really the data sets federal agencies are responsible for and work to help them appropriately managing those. We also operate the Geo platform, which is a kind of the federal place to go search for federal data. We establish and maintain geospatial data standards, and then also do a lot of reporting with Congress on how we're doing on our data. Right. So I think from an FGDC perspective, why FGDC is important to Connecticut. You know, this national spatial data infrastructure, which I'll talk a little bit about more in more detail over the next several slides, but it's really about when you think about what you guys do inside the state with, you know, towns and cities and counties and rolling up to the state. This is really the same idea, but thinking about it at a national level. You know, all the states and bringing data together, sharing data, and making it available for nationwide decision making, analytics, and use, and also making it easier to find around the country. You know, we are, as a 32 interagency committee, we're a good place to coordinate. So if you have questions for federal agencies and are having a hard time tracking them down, you can reach out to me or somebody on my team, and we'll help do our best to help you get that resolved. The standards that we set for geospatial data and metadata impact, you know, not just federal data, but a lot of states comply and have even enacted in law. I'm not sure if that's the case in Connecticut, but several states have requirements to follow federal standards in law. And even if that's not the case, if you're applying for federal grants, often you have to comply with federal standards. So FGDC standards would apply. Data access and sharing and participating with either providing your data up through the state to a national data set, participating in the theme communities. I'm sure some of you do that. I talk to a lot of people, as I know you guys do, so I think advocating for each other is another, you know, role when I get good examples or good opportunities to talk about things that I've learned about or know about. I try hard to advocate for other, you know, for states and local government, and my job is part of my responsibility. And then outreach and communications. How do we tell our story? And you guys talked about it, I think, on this call a couple of times. You know, the more effectively we can tell our story and the more effectively we can tell it together, I think the better we're going to get our message across about the value of what we're trying to do, which just helps all of us. I talked about the federal geospatial portfolio consists of 18 themes, 172 national geospatial data assets, and a minimum of about 220,000 geospatial data sets. I think that number is probably really low, the data set number. And another example of when you think about, you know, how does the federal Geographic Data Committee and federal policy impact Connecticut? Even some of the, you know, the data sets that you guys talk about here are really driven by the framework data that was originally set in OMB Circular A16 and is carried on through now referred to as themes, as I did a minute ago, and those those data sets. You guys are doing a great job. It was awesome to get a chance to kind of go through your maturity assessment. So I was excited to see that. Talk briefly about the Geospatial Data Act. I mentioned that established the Federal Geographic Data Committee, but also across the bottom, you kind of see, I don't know, maybe you can't see, depends on how good your vision is, but the act did a number of things, but it established FGDC responsibilities. In addition to that, it established the National Geospatial Advisory Committee, which is a committee that we have that is a federal advisory committee consisting of about 22 non-federal entities or representatives that state government, local government, academia, nonprofits, and the private sector, and they get to give advice and recommendations to FGDC on implementing geospatial programs across the federal government. So what's cool about that, we do have state and local representatives on NGAC. We're getting ready to open a call for nominations on that committee, so I'd encourage you guys to think about that and think if you might want to consider a state or local or county rep to nominate from Connecticut. So that's an opportunity. Probably in the next 60 to 90 days, we'll open nominations up for that process. For the 2020, late 24, we'll try to bring a new set of folks on. Also, the Geospatial Data Act talks about what the NSDI is and how it's used. It sets up our responsibilities for data stewardship, standards, the platform, and also requirements agencies have for managing their own geospatial data, and also how we interact with the non-federal community to implement the requirements we have in the Act. You've heard me mention the National Spatial Data Infrastructure a few times. I couldn't figure out a good flow to talk about this before I mentioned it the first time, so apologize for that if you're not familiar with it. But the NSDI is really a digital infrastructure that connects location information from all of the federal, state, tribal, and local governments, nonprofit, academia, and the private sector together for everybody to use. And it's really, if you think of it similar to a highway system, the NSDI is a digital infrastructure that really makes those connections, enabling local to national analysis, decision making, and data usage. I just like to throw this slide in. Some of these numbers are actually quite old. The geospatial world is getting ready to release, I think, in the next few months, a 2024 North American geospatial market analysis. But in 2012, the geospatial services companies were reporting about $1.6 trillion in revenue. So this is a huge industry and a huge component of our nation's economy and the work that we do. We got about 649,000 people in this country doing geospatial stuff. But anyway, just as context, I think it's really informative to put this into perspective. So what does the NSDI consist of? It's really those things on the left side, the governance, the coordination, the policies and processes, the technology, the standards, and the people that enable us to deliver geospatial data to the nation, at all levels. And so I say the nation, but it's through all of state and local government, tribes, academia, nonprofits, and the private sector to address issues that we face today, everything from agriculture, transportation, economy, and infrastructure as examples. I probably don't have to tell you guys how the NSDI is used, but geospatial data and information is used across the country to support a wide variety of functions critical to government and business, and really effectively using geospatial data and information saves time, money, and lives. I think there's when we think about the data that underpins all of those things, there are some data sets that are appropriate to collect at the local level, and maybe some data sets that are appropriate to collect at a federal or national level, and probably many in between the two. And I think I've Frank Winters from New York presented a briefing in ISJIC of, I think, a year or so ago, that I think had at least 3 or 4 different data flow pipelines. So this is just a couple of them, but we understand that road address, parcel, and local boundary data are good examples of information that's really best understood locally, built and provided, maintained at that level, and shared as appropriate. I think some things are also, lend themselves maybe to national data collection. So things like maybe public land parcels that are cutouts of state parcel data, hydrography, elevation, and things like 3DEP and the 3D elevation program and the 3D hydrography are examples of some national programs that lend themselves to collection at a federal level. So why the NSDI, and what value can that deliver? And I think it's important to keep in mind that natural disasters and emergencies don't understand political boundaries. Things like roads, bridges, dams, electric lines, gas lines, etc., can connect across political boundaries, and we need to coordinate and collaborate across those boundaries to make those connections. So, multi-county, multi-state, multi-jurisdictional issues, everyday activities like delivering ambulance services or fire trucks to the right place, or getting your dinner delivered, requires people to work across administrative boundaries. And how do we bring all this data together? Well, the NSDI, that mechanism and combination of standards and technology and people, is really that process. And how do we do that to work better together? We've been working, and I'll talk more about this in a few minutes, but we've been working on a national, the next iteration of the National Spatial Data Infrastructure Strategic Plan, and we're working on several pilot projects to look at how we can more effectively work across jurisdictional issues. And we're doing that pilot project with the National Geospatial Collaborative, which is NISJIC's, that's the National States Geospatial Information Council, if you're not familiar with that acronym, but NISJIC, and that's NISJIC's 5013C and the Open Geospatial Consortium. So really looking nationally to further the NSDI through some pilot work that we're doing. I wanted to talk a little bit about Connecticut's role in the NSDI. So, obviously, as I've been talking, local and state governments contribute key content to nationwide data sets, and also contribute local knowledge and understanding. States like Connecticut, where you have a mature and robust capability and geospatial program, have a role in contributing your experiences to national best practices and helping other states and other municipalities implement geospatial more effectively. Data sharing and coordination, data collection and maintenance, standards compliance. Connecticut has a state spatial data infrastructure, and connecting that infrastructure from local to state, and state to regional, and regional to national is a responsibility. And then building applications and tools, and capacity building and training. All right, so I'm going to shift and talk a little bit about the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, where we are today and where we're going in 2035, and then I'll talk about the kind of the NSDI strategic plan and how we're going to get there. So the National Spatial Data Infrastructure today consists of a robust national and private sector, nonprofit, academic, and government data sets. We have a global standards framework really that underpins a lot of what's what's possible today. So when you think of web services and you know the OGC APIs and things like that, those all came out of early work that the FGDC did back in the 90s, and those are really part of what underpin a lot of the way data moves and analysis happens today. We have a lot of tools and applications. We have state spatial data infrastructures. We have things like the Geo platform. We have a robust policy framework in the Geospatial Data Act, as well as OMB Circular A16 and a myriad of state, federal, and local policies and laws. All of those things are what are the foundation of what is the National Spatial Data Infrastructure today. Now, as we look towards what the NSDI is going to be in 2035, we're looking towards artificial intelligence driven action, global interoperability, self-updating maps, really a lot significantly improved search and discovery. It's really hard to find data even when you know it's there and you want to use it today. Immersive visualization and really making how we both view data and interact with the systems that share our data. A lot of changes and improvements there, and looking to geospatial knowledge and insights. So not just giving users huge sets of data, but help them derive first and second level knowledge from that data. And I think looking to expand the places where you can get geospatial information, so geospatially informed, not geospatially centric, location information integrated in with artificial intelligence. So when you ask something like Syria question, it has geospatial information available to query on the background, whether it provides you a map or not. And how are we going to get there? Either together, wait for it to happen, hope, develop a shared vision and plan to get, or develop a shared vision and plan to get there, or A and D. We're going to go with A and D. And so I've been working on the last year is an update to our current NSDI strategic plan. That the current plan expires in 24, so we're working on a 2035 strategic plan. I'll just run you through some examples of what's in that, or some highlights of what's in that plan today. So initially, a little bit of background. We drafted an initial set of goals for the plan based on stakeholder engagement. We've engaged with over 800 people in the last year through a series of conferences, one-on-one engagements, webinars, and meetings. We've also refined the initial draft, and we aligned it with the United Nations group of experts. So when we think about a national spatial data infrastructure, it's as important to make sure we include internal to the U.S. as global partners, because same issues that we face internal to this country don't happen in a vacuum. So we wanted to make sure we were integrated with how other countries were looking at their geospatial plans and processes. And then we integrated all of that feedback to come up with the current draft. The document, an introduction, executive summary, vision, mission, goals and objectives. We have a core values, use cases, and future outlook and trends, and then kind of a little section on the way ahead and how you can suggest improvements to the plan. And this process, Deirdre Bishop is the head of the geography division at the Census Bureau, and she and I are co-leading the development of the strategic plan. Here's the current vision and mission, and just I'll say this and I'll say it a few more times, but these are our this document is going to go out for public comment, and I am definitely would love your feedback into the plan. It'll go out in about the next month. But so these are draft into the this is what go out in the public comment version. We're really a seamlessly interconnected. I think national might be global now, but these are our 3 goals down the left-hand side, and then each goal has their objectives going from left to right. The global framework, the UN's framework has 3 goals and 3 objectives per goal. We added a 4th objective to the data and technology goal for infrastructure. So I thought it was important to have an infrastructure goal specifically. But otherwise, this matches the same framework the United Nations uses that's been, I think, implemented in 43 countries. I also thought it was important to identify priority national data sets to fill for the next, between now and 2035. So this is the initial shot at what those ought to be. Would definitely be interested in feedback on anything I have on here that shouldn't be on here, and or anything that's missing. This is just a rundown of the draft goals with each objective underneath them, a little bit more information there. I'm not going to read them completely to you, but governance and institutions, policy and legal and financial all roll up under goal 1 for governance. Goal 2 is there's a data component, innovation, standards, and infrastructure. Goal 3 is people, which includes partnerships, capacity and education, and community and communication and engagement. And I think that's so. We will next steps with the plan. We have finalized the draft plan, and we just submitted the Federal Register notice request through our office that audit. I think our target was mid to late May for that to get published. And I think it'll be out for 3 or 4 weeks for public comment, and we'll get the word out through NISJIC and a number of other places when that goes live to make sure nobody misses it. So then once we get the public comments back, I think we'll get them back in the June or July timeframe. So these dates might slip a little bit. It might be August before we try to finalize the plan through this steering committee, and then we really are starting to shift to thinking, okay, we've got this plan. What are the actions we're going to take to meet the goals and objectives in the plan, and who's going to take those actions? So who's responsible? And then, of course, we have to actually do the things we've written about, and that's really the harder part. So from now to the end of all of our careers, we can the implementation plan. I really wanted to highlight when I went through the what was the draft but is now the official strategic plan for Connecticut. I think there really was a lot of shared vision there. I think both plans recognize the importance of governance and the critical nature of data to everything we're doing. But both have and acknowledge the importance of standards, the need for funding. None of the data matters if you can't find it and access it, and then getting the word out and communicating about what we're doing. So I was excited to see the kind of synergies and places where we saw had a shared view of the world. And I think that this is really my last slide, except for a question slide. But I wanted to highlight a few opportunities to work together. So I mentioned input on the strategic plan. Would definitely be interested in your guys' thoughts and feedback there. Call for nominations for the National Geospatial Advisory Council. Our committee would encourage you guys to think about nominating somebody from your state to participate there. Filling the gaps we have in data, updating and maintaining the data you have, continuing to make your data available. I think telling your story is super important, and telling our story, acknowledging our individual roles from our organizations and perspectives in the context of our also national, state, and other responsibilities is important. And then as you know, I'll be happy to share an early version with Alberto if you want to send it out of the plan, or Alfredo. I said to myself, I really almost said I called you Alfredo, but I caught myself. But then I did it backwards. Sorry, Alfredo. I'll send a copy.
You got to
to
write
Alfredo.
me in.
I'll send a copy to you if you want to share it with everybody early, so you can take a look at it. But start thinking about your part in the plan, and then what will it take from your perspective to achieve that 2035 vision, and then what are the responsibilities for state and local government in the plan, and then of course these are just my thoughts, so you may have other thoughts or perspectives on how we might work together. I think that's my last slide.
All right. I know Carl has a question, but before we go there, I just want to say thank you to Josh for this presentation. It's a really important topic. I really appreciate kind of like highlighting the strategic plan and kind of where you guys are going. It's really helpful to kind of understand and make sure that we kind of align on these things. And, we all want to be kind of rowing in the same direction, as it were, because we want to make sure that like the stuff that we are doing at our level eventually is going to roll up to yours. So like all the trouble and the effort that we're putting in to make sure that we get our parcels right, for example, we want to make sure that that gets represented right at at the national and international levels, make sure that like people understand what it actually is in our state. So I guess I'll ask the question is, like what is a kind of like a very tangible way in which, say, a locality or a region or even the state, my office or someone else at the state can really contribute in an active way to some of this stuff, to make sure that like, we're doing the right thing, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So I hit a couple of them on my my last slide for sure, and I think making sure that the data that you're providing and working on really meets your state and local requirements, is following standards, so that when your data has to, like, we all know what it's like to pull a data set out that either is you're like, man, I don't understand what that attribute really is called, or what that really means, or how old is this data, or how good, or it's in the undocumented datum or projection or something, and you're so I think fundamentally keeping and maintaining data right, and then I'd just say for all of us to participate, right, like you guys are all already doing that, and it's clear that's what you believe in, because you're on this call, right? And but the world's a big place, and there's a lot of great opportunities. If you haven't had a chance to attend a NISJIC, that's awesome. There's we do a U.S. delegation to the UN every end of every summer to go listen to the group of experts on global geographic information management in New York for a week in August. That's a cool opportunity. There's a GeoGov conference in September in DC on the NSDI, and bringing also, so I think just participating and understanding the the places you might not normally engage are always a good opportunity.
Sure. One last question from me is, so, a lot of the times, we're, developing kind of data sets, or, asked to develop data sets, that, we may at a locality or a region or even at the state, maybe not have a lot of experience with. Are there, like, I know part of the NSDI is kind of helping to create maybe like a pipeline, if you will. Are there like a place where we can find like recommendations on how we should structure that data or prepare it so that like we start thinking about it kind of from like a more holistic kind of place? So if we're like, say, trying to come up with a culverts layer, for example, like is there a standard practice that, of what might be needed at that really high level that we would need to account for kind of down at ours, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I might answer it in a couple different ways. I think on the sort of the theme and NGDA data set side, I think that's probably better defined than it is if there are data sets that aren't included in that, particularly from a federal level. I think we probably have a lot of work to do in that area, and I'm not convinced that we have the time to do that work, and that we might not need to be thinking differently about how we're doing it, and how we might, like, are there ways to use, I hate to say, because I think there's a lot of buzz around AI that might take forever to, but could you use something like AI to go, hey, let's go find me the culvert data that Alfredo's got, find it what I've got, and bring it together without having to do that. But right now we have to do these standards and data models, and I think we have work to do in having strong national data models and standards for all of the data that we need. So I think helping there too, right? I mean, we're gonna be smart about it. Like we're required, but I also think it just makes good sense to look at, if a standard existed at the Open Geospatial Consortium, or there was a widely adopted standard. I mean, I always kind of like to think about it like the first rule of thumb is don't go off and do anything weird, right? Like don't go like, hey, I think I should make up my own standard for this, or oh, I'm going to adopt this thing that this one niche place over here is using and no one else is. Like, let's look, widely adopted, supported in COTS applications and things like that. But there isn't a great place right now. I mean, FGDC's, we haven't had a standards person since 2017 or 2017 or 18, I think, when Julie retired, and I'm working hard to bring that back. But we're not where I think we should be with standards, and we got a ways to go before we're going to be there.
Oh, all right, thank you. No, like I said, it's not to call you guys out or anything, but just it's a thing that comes up for us a lot. Like we're having to like, how do we do this? What is out there? I think short of having to do a full lit review to understand what the universe of what's out there is, having that in a kind of a consolidated place would be really helpful for obviously not just us.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, and I'd like to get there. I'd like to tell you I think I can do it quickly, but it might take some time. And also, the other thing that we're on the federal side, we're looking to because at this point my office is so under resourced that we just don't have the people or the capacity to really take that work on front and center us. We're looking for help there, right? So if like Connecticut did an awesome culvert data model, and you were like, this is something everybody's using, we'd love to use, take the work that you do in one of those areas and look to promote it as a national culvert model, as to follow your example.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Sorry I took up so much time. Carl, did you have a question?
Yeah, Josh, thanks for doing this for us. And you really are dealing with foundational GIS issues that go back a long time. So I really appreciate that. I have a question about kind of the concept of NDSI. Data is going faster. It's getting more volumetric. There's stuff that's becoming more real time. And I know the infrastructure covers a lot of what people do in their day-to-day, geospatial professional lives. But how do you think the concept of NSDI will translates into the future when more data is flowing faster across more systems, and there's this sort of things become data can essentially become more self-organized. So it doesn't necessarily it's not structural anymore, but it has its own emergent patterns. How do you think that might kind of be dealt with in the future?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and also thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I mean, I think it's part of what we have to get good at and think about how to accommodate some of the challenges we're seeing today with OpenStreetMap and crowdsourcing and federal agency data and the speed and volume of data, and even things like what is authoritative data, right? We get this discussion around trails, for example. Like if you don't know Ken Schaefer, my deputy, Ken's my deputy. We were talking just last week about trails, and he's like, but doesn't the Forest Service or the Park Services, they set the authoritative trail data, and then you're like, yeah, but if Onyx or All Trails publishes a trail and 1,000 people walk on that trail because that app says it, is the Park Service really setting authoritative trails data, or is because now the Park Service has a trail, they have to either close or maintain, or they just incurred management responsibilities there. So I think there's a huge rethinking about what the NSDI is, and really bringing it into modern technology and thoughts around a monolithic single system is probably not reasonable or realistic, and how do you accommodate massive amounts of data moving and changing and updates and meet that across a lot of systems, and what's I think maybe a looser federation of that term ecosystem is maybe more appropriately descriptive than. But anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure I answered your question, but yes, I agree. There's a lot of challenges there.
I'm just curious what your response is, because I mean, it obviously it is infrastructure, and these are foundational data sets. And I'm fully, so much of GIS runs on these, and these are the cherry picked foundation ones. But there is the fact is there's a whole new volume of and speed of GIS data, like cell phone data and other stuff, traffic data, that it really is has its own built-in patterns that are no longer fixed. So anyway, I'm just curious what you thought about that.
Yeah,
thank you.
And it's also actually it's interesting. I was at that NSDI pilot session a couple weeks ago, and I think the scale is interesting too, right? Like UPS has got every driver collecting information, and or Google's pulling every traffic information from every cell phone. And I mean, just the vol, I'm still thinking in my heyday was all right, I got to take a GPS unit out, and I got to go, how would I ever digitize every address in the whole country? It's a 10 million year process. And then when you start thinking about how the capacity is way different, right? And the tools are very different. And you have cell phones and GPS units and cars and things that are, at least for me, hard to even understand how that changes what's possible today.
That's good. Any other questions from anyone? Don't be shy. We got Josh here for us to answer all these questions, so feel free.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. So, honestly, you're my first state presentation. Not for, well, it's not true. I briefed New York very early in I'm a New Yorker, so I briefed New York early in my tenure in this job, but you guys are my first trying to tailor the message to the state and local community. Was that effective? Was I were you I don't know, this guy sounds like he's, I mean, did I hit the right, did it resonate, or I got to do this with North Carolina in about a week, so. And I'm not looking for compliments. You don't have to be like, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some things that I think for me, if I think we could talk about like the ways, like the tangible ways in which we could interact, and the ways that the NSDI or FGDC could be beneficial to us at both the state and then the local level as well, because that's also kind of really important, is making sure, because like we're all in this together, and a lot of these data sets, the source of truth are a lot of the people that are on this call. You know, like they're the ones with the hands-on, like the making the decisions about where the address is or what it even should be. So making sure that we understand that, you know, these decisions have very, very wide-reaching ramifications. You know, like I live in a small town, so like, you know, the person in charge of assigning the addresses may not really think twice about like, oh, should this be 132 or 134, or you know, maybe it skips 20 and should be 152. But then, you know, like not think, you know, they might be only thinking about what it means for their small town, but not realizing that it has implications globally potentially. So I think, you know, being a little bit, you know, like if I had to kind of offer a bit of constructive criticism, being a little bit more kind of like specific to that, and making sure that we understand that like that's the relationship here, is like we have to understand that there is the world out there, and some of these micro decisions do matter.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, you made me think of parcels too. I mean, several people said, you know, like companies do planning, initial planning for where they're going to, you know, put new stores, or, you know, invest or manufacturing or whatever, based on availability of parcel data. And if your parcel data is either unavailable or hard to get to, you're out at square one, because it's not like they're going, well, okay, to find out what's possible in that county, we're going to go to the courthouse, or we're going to mess around. They're going to take the easiest first run at it. So decisions around, you know, what parcels are where, and how to make it available have real, you know, economic consequences.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I can't overstate enough how much this stuff matters at like all levels, and it, you know, it really does flow back and forth. That's kind of why I was asking the question about like, you know, are there best practices that maybe we should be, you know, like is there a place where we can find these best practices so that we make sure that like not just that the data is available, that we make the data better for ourselves as well, because it's not just kind of like making sure that we serve kind of like the biggest possible audience, but it's also like some of these best practices are best practices for a reason, right? They're going to help us do our job better. Yeah, I think if just maybe I guess bring it back to the point, just like being a little bit more targeted about like that interaction, and like what is the interaction, what should the interaction be, and what are the benefits to both sides.
Yep. Cool. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or suggestions or questions? All right. With all of that, thank you so much, Josh, for joining us. We certainly learned a lot. I'll echo Eric Snowden there, his sentiments. This has been really a important conversation that I appreciate having. Hopefully, we can have you again for GIS Day. Maybe we can have you come out for that. I think that would be another good place to kind of tell this story again. Thank you all to the council for kind of joining us today and having this discussion. I appreciate your time and your effort on all of this stuff, and discussing and approving the strategic plan. We will be publishing that soon. And with that, I move to adjourn.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.